So hey, I'm Chris with Cycle Source Magazine.
I'm Heather with Cycle Source Magazine, and we're hanging out at Dennis Kirk today.
I did not know that.
That's pretty wild.
That is wild. So Heather, then for you, you meet him. He's crazy and wild doing his thing. He's got this business going that is equally crazy and wild. And like you mentioned it earlier, like Chris the man is easy enough with the passion and whatnot to want to hitch on and follow that dream. But you still got the business. So like what makes you come in and go like, I not only want to be a part of this man's life, I want to be a part of this business?
You know, honestly, it just happened. Like, it literally just happened. Like, he's like, hey, I think it started with an Excel spreadsheet, like his subscriber list or something stupid like that. And then next thing I knew, I was managing editor and all of the stuff. And I've learned more about this business and Photoshop and video editing and things that I never, ever, ever thought I would. Like, it literally just happened very, very organically. It wasn't a question of, do you want to do this? It was, here, do this. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're going to be a partner in my life, you're a partner in everything I do.
Well, otherwise we'd spend no time together.
Right.
Because this is not something that you do as a job.
No, it's not. It is our life. And actually, a young kid asked me just last week in Arizona. He said, "How do you balance work life, shop life, and life life?" I said, "You really don't. There's work life and shop life. Every now and then, you'll sneak in a little bit of life, and you just make it count as much as you can.
Otherwise, it's all the same.
Otherwise, yeah, And eventually there will be more life, and you'll have those moments. And
oh, and there, we talked about this when we came in. There are times that we've had in our ever fleeting life moments.
Amazing moments.
We've woke up to a sunrise on the southern rim of the Grand Canyon.
Yep.
We've, raced through the night to have cafe au lait and beignets at Cafe Dumont.
Right.
Like things that are like lifetime goals for people. Like we get to do stuff like that.
Yeah, we're blessed with, we get to go to Sturgis every year. I've been to Sturgis every year for 15 years. And not only do I now get to go to Sturgis, I get to help people make memories in Sturgis. Mm-hmm. It's pretty rad.
Yeah.
Like we get to climb Bear Butte, and we've been all over this country because of motorcycles and motorcycle people. I've met some of the greatest people on the earth doing this, and I wouldn't change it. Well, most days I wouldn't change it.
But she was at a pivotal moment as well, because
yeah, the Broken Spoke had just sold.
Yeah.
And I had done that for 10 years. They had just sold, and I was kind of in limbo. And it was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I picked up my daughter, and I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My son was already off in the Marine Corps. She was 15, I think, when we moved.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happened, and I've kind of grown into it over the years.
So we'll have to send you a picture to use at this point when we tell this part of the story.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff we'd love to get.
But there's a motorcycle. It was my first ever bike in Michael Lichter's show, and the exhibit that year was called Skin and Bones.
Or to death.
One day when I came home, a couple years before Heather moved in with me, there was an old 73 Ironhead parked in my driveway. It was every stinky rotten old Ironhead you ever saw. It was white-ish, mostly yellow and brown, and just leaking from everywhere, and looked like it had been drugged through a mud puddle. And it had a sign on it that said, "Make something cool out of me." Well, I took it inside and cleaned it off a little bit, and a buddy of mine called me. He said, "Hey," he said, "I got this in a deal with a couple other things." He said, "I don't want an Ironhead, so do whatever you want with it." I took it all apart and put it all up on the shelf, and I was like, someday I'll get to it, I'll make it into something cool. When she first moved in with me and decided, we decided, okay,
this is what
you're
we're
going to
do
do this with me, this is going to be our thing. I took that down and I said, so the first thing we're going to do is you're going to build a bike with me. And she was like, okay. And I said, not because
I do not
want
come
you to
from a
be,
motorcycle background at all.
Okay.
and I said, not because I want you to be, you know, Betty Bike Builder. I said, if you're going to be involved in telling stories of people who really put everything they have into these motorcycles, I want you to understand what they go through. I want you to know from the start to the finish of a build, I want you to understand what's involved in that. I want you to understand it from their perspective. So I made her come out in the shop and grind and plan and you know, fetch parts with me and everything the whole way through it.
Yep. Yep. And then take it back apart when we needed to engrave it. We had the bike 100% complete, and MFL, God love him, calls and says, hey, I'm doing this exhibit this year. You know, I'd love to have you, but you don't have a bike that fits it, do you? And again, skin and bones, it was all tattoo and things like that. And he says,
yeah,
I'll pull the motor and engrave it. And we had just finished it. So we pulled the motor and we laid it out and we engraved everything, like the entire case, like rocker boxes and everything. And
which was cool because
which was super cool.
We named the bike Board to Death.
Take on BOARD, take on like a board track racer, and
then
the Wall of Death
was a tribute to the Wall of Death. So all of the engraving became like when you go to see the Wall of Death, they have these carnival barks that they put out. You know, crazy riders, crazy drivers, motorcycle maniacs. We put
thrills,
those
chills,
all
and
over
spills.
it, you know.
So that was the first time he was ever in Michael's exhibit, and the worst part is we weren't even there for the picture.
Oh no.
We weren't even there for the picture. I think we were doing a show or something crazy like that, but no, I gained a whole new respect for motorcycles and motorcycle builders, and I've learned so much over the years because, you know, coming from the Broken Spoke and being a bar manager, yeah, I was part of the motorcycle world, but I wasn't part of the motorcycle world. You know what I mean? I just hosted them and, you know, got them drunk and sent them on their way. It was great. But over the years, I've learned so much about motorcycles and motorcycle community and people, and it's been more than I ever thought I would, you know?
It's funny, especially now, people that don't know her and will be somewhere, and you see a guy come up to her and want to treat her like the typical little blonde and say something to her, and she'll go, no, it's not.
Yeah, they'll be, like last week, they're like, oh, look at that panhead. I'm like, that's great, it's not a panhead. It's actually a Sportster. And they're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. And they walk away.
You know, where does the passion for motorcycles and motorcycle building, you know, that leads up to Cycle Source and everything you've done with Cycle Source, and you know, really the builder you've become recognized as through Cycle Source. You know, where does all that come from back in the youth?
You know, the beginning of the motorcycle thing for me is that thing I repeat all the time about how motorcycles saved my life. You know, my mom was an IV drug abuser. You know, I was in horrible situations growing up, and I'm not saying that because I want anybody's pity, but every situation you can imagine. I mean, she was a prostitute. There were always junkies around my house. I quit high school in 10th grade because the parallels of those two worlds were just, it was unconscionable, you know. But it wasn't until I found myself around a group of men that society said were the lunatic fringe, you know, their loud motorcycles and their naked booby parties. These were the crazy people, but it was mostly Vietnam veterans, you know, that couldn't find their way back into regular society, but they found each other. And those guys taught me values. You know, they taught me respect for myself, for other people, to keep my word, to take care of my equipment, to, you know, they in short, they taught me to be a man. And it all happened through motorcycles. So in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania especially, it's not a question of if you can build a bike, if you can work on a bike. If you're going to ride a motorcycle, it's a very depressed community. It always has been. And if you're gonna have something, 9 times out of 10, You're not going to be the guy in the neighborhood with the money that can have somebody else do the stuff for him. You're going to be the guy that learns how to do it. So we had a great network and forced community over the fact that, like, maybe this guy could paint, this guy could weld, this guy was good at tuning carburetors, you know, like everybody had something they contributed, but you did stuff, you know, and the idea of bike building, like from scratch, it wasn't as much that as, you know, my first 1981 Super Glide in the time that I owned it was 14 different motorcycles, because I was never going to have 14 different bikes, but every year I could go to a little aftermarket store, and maybe this year, instead of having Fat Bob tanks, I'd get a Frisco Sportster, and instead of having a wraparound fender, I was going to run a bobtail fender, and, you know, instead of baloney cut exhaust pipes, I would get some kind of, you know, cool kick-ups or something like that, or I might find a Springer one year at a swap meet and figure out how to use that. So that was what we did all the time, and I guess the nature of, you know, of backyard engineering to figure out how to make these pieces fit and everything that went with it.
And I think, like, I've never known anybody to have a thirst for knowledge like him. Like, when he wants to learn something new, he immerses himself in it, whether it be how to engrave or paint or play music or learn how digital broadcasting. Like, he literally immerses himself in it. And I think some of that stems from he has to prove that he can do it.
Yeah, that was a hang up from quitting school. Quitting school that broke my heart. It did, because I was never dumb. And I mean, immediately after school, after I quit, I went and got my general equivalency, but I never wanted someone to be able to say that I lacked intellect, you know. But I do still to this day. I force myself into situations. We just completed the Chopper Friends Throwdown, and I built, you know, my first scratch built frame, you know, which as a builder, that's a monumental achievement. But for me, I think more of the achievement was the fact that I learned enough about my milling machine that I've owned for 7 years now to be able to make the components to go over and build that frame from scratch. You know what I mean? Like, it was 7 years ago, a very dear friend of mine
was it that long ago?
Selling his business.
Oh, jeepers.
And I went to the auction, and he had a manual machine shop, and I bought his very first machine that he ever bought new as a young man. And she was kind of pissed that I bought it, and, you know, I bought it and I put it in the garage, and for 7 years, all she has seen is this great big milling machine in the middle of my garage.
That cost, you know, yeah.
And the whole time she's like, well, when are you going to do something with this? Well, you know,
and I know better now.
I'm getting the Callens together, I'm buying bits here and there, I get a vise. Like, it takes time. When you don't do that stuff for a living, you can't just go out and say, okay, well, here's $9,000. Give me everything that I'm going to need to run a milling machine. Because first of all, you won't get everything that you need. You don't even know what you're buying. You know, and secondly, it's just, you're never going to convince your wife. If you're not making money with that machine, you're not going to convince your wife that you can go do that. Pretty
much now I'm just like, okay, whatever.
So I got all the stuff, and that was the big achievement, was I can use a mill. It's pretty sexy.
Oh, Lord help me.
So when you started getting Chris and started getting in the motorcycle world through his eyes, essentially, and you found, you know, your own love for it too, what about this part of the culture that you're getting introduced to that you fell in love with? That you wanted to roll with this?
First of all, I have to tell you, his warning label was not big enough. Like, it should have been way bigger.
Red flags.
Because I had no idea I literally had no idea what I was getting into. You know, I think it's really the people that hold true to the core values. Because I think so much is lost in today's society. But when we really dig deep and we get those minutes to sit down and talk to people, especially the ones that have been around for a while, those core values do still exist. The honor and the respect and the kindness and generosity, and the fact that, you know, we're blessed that we can go pretty much anywhere in this country, and if something happens, we can be like, okay, you know, I need this, or does anybody have that, or can I crash at your place tonight, or whatever. But it's really got to be the people. I mean, I love motorcycles in general. I mean, I'm a self-proclaimed chopper chick through and through. I mean, I'll never deny the craftsmanship on a lot of the other bikes, but I love choppers, sorry. But it's really the people. Like, you know, I don't know that I've ever known a more generous demographic than the motorcycle community. I hate the word biker, I'm sorry, so it will always be motorcycle community. I think that's really it, whether it be needing help because you're in an accident or somebody was in an accident or somebody was sick, or, you know, I started this project last year called Tankful.
So cool.
You know, it's everybody deserves a full tank. And I got some tanks donated by Paco Parts, and I reached out to a bunch of different artists across the country and I said, hey, can you paint these for me? I'm gonna auction them off. Well, through that first year event, I donated $15,000 to Meals on Wheels through the motorcycle community. There's no other community out there that would do something like that. And it happens time and time and time again. A brother goes down on a motorcycle and there's a GoFundMe and, you know, $50,000 to make sure that he can just get by until he can get back to work. Or, you know, even right down to somebody's dog is sick. You know what I mean? Like, they're just so kind and generous, and not all of them. I mean, it's just like everywhere else. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But
by and large, though.
But by and large, they're just good, honest, hardworking people, you know?
I think the other part, too, Heather had and she's going to kill me for taking this there, but Heather had a very close relationship with her father. And her father I didn't actually get to know him personally, but through the stories and personal accounts, I think he was affected with a certain amount of wanderlust.
Oh, absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. I can't.
You have to. That's the story, man.
That's okay.
When you guys got the opportunity to get involved with garage build, you know, at the time it was just an idea, and you know, you heard about this idea and you wanted to maybe run with it. You know, what was that like? Why did you guys want to get involved with Dennis Kirk and their garage build program and to be a part of it?
Can I take that one?
Yeah.
I think mostly because, like, the biggest thing with Dennis Kirk and their garage build program, it's very rare that you see a company as big as Dennis Kirk provide a platform for people to share their passion without expecting something in return. Like, there's no purchase necessary to submit your motorcycle and to share your story of what you've just spent sometimes your life's work on. You know, some people spend their entire life working on one motorcycle. And they give them the opportunity to share with the world what they're doing and their story. And again, they don't expect anything in return. That's so rare in today's day and age, you know? Like, I don't see any other companies doing that without an expectation, without their handout. You know, of course, yeah, in the end, maybe they may go to Dennis Kirk and buy a part. Maybe they don't. Maybe they fabricated everything they put on that bike themselves, but don't have a way to share it with everybody. They provide that to them. And that's, for us, we're storytellers. So the fact that Dennis Kirk lets people tell their story, it's just was a perfect fit for us. You know, we're a grassroots publication. I can't even say publication, we're a grassroots media outlet, and we want to share those stories. So to have somebody with a similar goal in mind want to work with us, it just seemed like the perfect fit.
Well, and you know, too, again, to go back to where I'm from and how motorcycling was coming up, the garage part, you know, so many people, especially in this day and age, are looking for that influencer or, you know, name brand that they can add to a program like this. To see somebody reinvest in the beginning of this and where it started for me personally, you know, I see a lot of value in that. A lot of value in the fact that the work that's being done with garage build is planting seeds of a crop that we may never see. You know what I mean? It's continuing that passion and continuing to show that there's something that exists outside of the retail opportunity of this that we all share.
What's next for CycleSource?
No, I think CycleSource is going to keep evolving. You know, for us, so many people focus on looking forward, but with us, it's just as important to look back to where everything came from and where it started.
Yeah.
And we have to tell those stories of those before us.
Because again, now popular culture is kind of, motorcycles. So here we are responsible for keeping our own history again. And now we don't have the benefit of all those magazines. that
Right.
used to be
You know,
there.
to think about, you know, that 25-year-old kid that's on a knucklehead chopper, not knowing who Sugar Bear is, or who Dave Perowitz is, or
Yeah.
you know, that's heartbreaking. And we need to keep that alive to keep this industry going, I think.
And that's the danger we talked about with the fragile nature of social media's shelf life. There's nothing that has that archival quality now.
So
you know, at least with magazines, your dad used to have boxes of them sitting over there. If you really wanted to learn something, it was in one of those magazines. You know, you flip through stuff until you saw something on SU carburetors. Okay, cool.
So I think you'll see, you know, Cycle Source will still always be print. It'll still be always on social media as long as that still exists. You're gonna, as long, and I think you'll be able to turn on your TV and see Cycle Source too, in some way, shape, or form. So I think that's what's coming down the road, as we just keep evolving and growing. And I get a little bit older and a little bit grayer and
A little bit crazier.
And
A little bit
another
crazier.
panhead.
Well, to close it out then, if you guys wouldn't mind telling the audience, where can they find everything Cycle Source?
Pretty much if you just search Cycle Source Magazine,
Yeah.
you know, YouTube, all the social media.
But no, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, website, all Cycle Source Magazine.
And every Sunday,
Yeah, Sunday night.
same chopper time.
Same chopper channel, shop talk.